look at a few more examples just to see what all can happen, a few more things that can happen. So again, this has 4 terms. There's not a greatest common factor between 4s and 5s. So we'll look at the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms, grouping. The first 2 terms have a y squared in common, so we'll write that out in front. If I pull out a y squared, I have 4y left in the first term and 5 in the second term. Now in the last 2 terms, there isn't anything in common except for that negative, so we'll write a -1. That changes the 4y to positive and the 5 to positive. And now these match, so we have 4y plus 5, and then we have y squared minus 1. Now when we check to see if we can go any further, we see this right here has a squared in it, and it's a binomial, and it is subtraction. So we're looking to see if there's something squared minus something else squared. Well, y squared can be y times y, and 1 could be 1 times 1. So this part we could write as y plus 1, y minus 1. And this we just bring straight down and keep it with it. And that's now factored. This is not in standard form, so we need to write it in standard form first. We write the x squared part first, and then the x, and then the number. And now we look for a greatest common factor, and it does have a greatest common factor. 3 will go into all of those. And we don't like this negative in front, so we're going to do a -3. So -24 divided by -3 is 8x squared. -9 divided by -3 is a positive 3x. And 6 divided by -3 is a -2. So now we have a trinomial inside. So we take a times c, which is -16. That tells me I need a -16 to multiply and adding to get a positive 3. So 16 can be 1 times 16, 2 times 8, and 4 times 4. If I need a negative number, I need one of those to be negative. But I'm trying to get a positive addition, so I need my smaller number to be negative. If I look at these, none of these add to get a positive 3. This adds to get a positive 15. This adds to get a positive 6. And this adds to get 0. So that means that I can't factor that trinomial any further. That means that right here is my final answer. Now we don't do prime, we don't say it's prime because it's not the same as what we started with. We've done something to it. We just can't do anything with what's inside any further. So this one is in standard form. There is not a greatest common factor between 3, 5, and 12. So we just start with our trinomial. We take 3 times -12 and we get -36. So we're trying to multiply to get -36 and add to get a -5. So 36 can be 1 times 36, 2 times 18, 3 times 12, 4 times 9, and 6 times 6. If I want a negative multiplication, 1 has to be negative. And I want a negative addition, so my bigger number needs to be negative. And I see this pair right here gives me a -5. So I'd have 4 and -9. So I put 3 over 4 and 3 over -9. This one can be reduced. There's b's on the top. Just read straight down, so I have 3b plus 4 and b minus 3. Here, there is no greatest common factor between 5, 16, and 4. It's in standard form. It's a trinomial. So I start with 5 times 4, and I get 20. So I'm looking for two things that multiply to get 20 and add to get 16. It's all positive, so I have all positive numbers. 1 times 20, 2 times 10, 3 doesn't work, 4 times 5. So that's all we have for 20. Now none of those add to get 16. So that means we can't factor this. And we did nothing to it. There wasn't a greatest common factor or anything. So it's prime. Okay, so let's look at this one. This one is not in standard form. Let's put the x squared first. There's not a greatest common factor, but we don't like that negative in front, so we'll factor a -1, and remember that changes both of our signs. So now we have a binomial. So we're trying to see, is there something squared minus something else squared? There's an x. And 10 times 10 is 100, so we have 10 in our second spot. So we'd have x plus 10, x minus 10, and this -1 that was in front has to stay in front. Now with binomials, we could have just left it like this and realized that this is 10 squared minus x squared, and then 10 plus x and 10 minus x. And then because the order is different, we don't have that -1 in front. And this is an okay answer too. One more. So these both have a common factor of z plus 10. So we'll start by writing that out. And that leaves us with a z squared and a minus 100. Now this is a binomial. It's really z squared minus 10 squared. So that will factor as z plus 10, z minus 10. Now we already had the z plus 10 there, so it would just come straight down. Now this has z plus 10 in two different spots, so this is why I left this here. When we have factors that match exactly and they appear more than once, then oftentimes we'll write them once with a squared outside. That shows that that z plus 10 was there 2 times. And then just write the z minus 10. This first answer is okay, but it's not as preferred as this answer.